Nimish. How are you doing?
Hi, Puneet. Good. It's good to see you face to face, or
Excellent.
kind of face to face after a long time.
Yeah, that's the only way we can meet these days, right?
Yeah, it's better than nothing. So it's great to see you, man.
Yes. We should be grateful for what we have. This is
Absolutely.
one of the few things which I've learned from you, Mr. Dayal. Nimish, you want to set some context on, why are we having this conversation, and what is our objective here, and then I can, get into more details about other things.
Well, I wanted to have a chat with you and also share this with my friends and my followers online on how to cope up with this interesting predicament that we're in. Um,
That's that's
Most
great.
of us, yes, most of us haven't seen anything like this before. So I thought maybe it's a good time to share some inputs and some tips on how you can cope up with the current times in the best possible way.
That's great. So that's right. A lot of people are facing a lot of issues, especially locked up in their houses. And I think a common complaint which a lot of my friends kind of talk about are they're feeling anxious about not knowing the future. And because it's all uncertain right now. The economics are uncertain, the businesses are uncertain, your jobs are uncertain. So, for a common man, for an average Joe next door, how do you deal with all this uncertainty and all the anxiety which comes out of the uncertainty? What are your tips to address those things?
So ever since man's been around, I think he gets slightly stressed about thinking about the future. I mean, this is slightly assumptive, but if you imagine the life of a caveman, he would go out and hunt not just for his current meal. He'd try and hunt or gather food for the few days that are coming up. The objective was the uncertainty. Maybe tomorrow or day after he wouldn't find food. So this uncertainty is, in a way, it's deeply ingrained in us, in our mentalities. Um, and so what essentially happens is this uncertainty, which is ingrained in us, it's sort of amplified as time has progressed, as resources have become fewer and population has grown larger, uncertainties have grown. And now this has sort of been, the corona thing has been like an agent, and it's made this uncertainty reach absolutely new heights. This actually reminds me of a saying by one of my favorite Chinese philosophers, Lao Tzu. He'd said that people are anxious if they live in the futures. The ones who are depressed are often living in the past. But the only
That's
way
right.
to be happy is to sort of live in the moment. I tried reminding myself about that because the first couple of days when, I'm a yoga and a meditation teacher, I was around, I was around the country and other parts and training people on yoga and meditation. And the first few days of the lockdown, I found myself just immersed in my practice and not sharing. And this was different for me, much like these times are different for everybody. So the first few days were a little challenging, but it required a little bit of recalibration of the mind and resetting of expectations and also understanding the current moment and reality. And once I sort of understood what the whole Corona deal was, and it's probably going to go on for a few more months, I recalibrated my expectations, and I started building uh, yoga classes online, meditation online, and I got busy again. Having said that, it wasn't easy, but it was reasonably achievable for me, and I think I achieved it um, to a fair extent. And I find myself at calm and at peace now. So the learning from that would be, and I like to share that with the other people as well, is that try and analyze what is the best that you can do in this current possible scenario. There are things that we worry about, which are often not in our control. So we worry about the politicians, the economy, the coronavirus, and none of this is really in our control, is it? And then we end up worrying so much about it, and it's that worry is just it's a waste of energy. So stop worrying about things that you don't have control over, and try and focus on things that you have control over. I mean, we have control over the way we spend our time, uh, our health, the food that we consume, the people that we speak with. And to a certain extent, we also have,
Yeah.
we can manage the thoughts that come in our mind. We can disconnect from certain thoughts, we can
Yes.
connect with certain thoughts, and so on and so forth. And so that would be my takeaway from this entire experience. And so far, so good. I'm coping up okay. My friends, my family, my near and dear ones are well. I've been more in touch with them ever. And yes, so it's looking good, Mr. Gangwani.
I think that's a great message, Nimish, for everyone. That first thing which you said, which really resonated with me was do not live in the past, do not live in the future, live in the current moment. And the second, which is a key message of of your answers, that you focus on things which are in your control and don't worry about things which are not in your control. I think that's a great takeaway for for everybody. So Nimish, you spoke a little bit about your journey, about how you recalibrated into this current mode, and I've known you personally for a while. I know you to be a very outdoor person, but you recalibrated, you as you said, you recalibrated the whole situation, and you turned into an indoor person, and you're still being productive, you're still adding value to society, you're still trying to make a living. And it's very interesting that you're doing what you're doing. What I would really like to know is how the journey came to be, and how you landed up in the point where you are, point in time where you are today. So what was the journey like? Why did you choose to focus on fitness, on yoga? Why did you choose to become a yoga teacher? How did you land up in this place?
This is actually an interesting story, Puneet. A lot of the stuff that's happened in my life has been incidental, to say the least. So, my father was in the Indian Air Force. My younger brother, and my dad used to saunter off to the Himalayas when I was even before my teens. So it's been close to 30 years that I've been traveling up on hills. So I've always had a love for these Himalayan mountains. So around the age of, I think it was 27 or 28, uh, I got excited at the thought of summiting Mount Everest. Now, yeah, so about 12 or 13 years back, I dreamt of, you know, getting on top of the highest mountain in the world. And I knew that getting up on this highest mountain is not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenging task. So over the past 12 or 13 years, I got involved into a lot of physical activity. I also started practicing a little bit of yoga, a little bit of mental gymnastics, if you please, a little bit of meditation, um, and also running and swimming, etc. At the age of 35 or 36, I realized that I was sort of living the treadmill life. I was endlessly running on a treadmill without reaching any sort of goal. And I told myself, enough is enough, Nimish. You know, you've got to live out your dream. It's important to live out your dream. So I was up in the Himalayas about 4 years back. Incidentally, I happened to see a yoga school. I checked it out and I felt an instant connection. I spent the next couple of months exploring yoga and the magical impact it can have, not just on the body, but more importantly, on the mind. And it was a romance. I fell in love with yoga. I came back again the following year, spent a few more months in the yoga school up on the mountains. And then I decided that this was it. I'm going to deep dive into yoga and share yoga with people, with kids, with professionals, adults, with senior citizens. I'm going to share yoga with every person that I meet. I therefore enrolled in a yoga school a couple of years back, got myself certified as a yoga teacher, and and here I am teaching yoga to people. But you'll have to see, Puneet, that 4 years back, before I actually went to any yoga school, my objective was purely physical. just like the rest of the world perceives yoga to be. When I enrolled in the yoga course, I realized that there is just so much more to yoga. It's just so much more than holding difficult acrobatic poses for any duration of time. There's so much more about balance, alignment, your breath, reducing your number of thoughts, having a positive outlook towards life, and just the way you deal with people, what you eat. I mean, it influenced every facet of my life. I stumbled upon minimalism. I, made a drastic change to my lifestyle. From a large house, I'm now living in a house which is, less than half the size of my previous house. I was not enamored by buying properties or driving big cars anymore. So there was a huge shift in my perception of things around me, and it was a bit of a wake up. And at some point, this yoga practice got really deep, and I decided to use my yoga practice now, not just to climb Mount Everest, but to do it without supplemental oxygen. So because I got involved with breath work, and I was able to hold my breath for over 2 minutes. I got my resting heart rate to 45 beats per minute. I was feeling stronger than ever. And here I am in my 40s, and I'm saying this at my 40s. I mean, I feel stronger now than I was in my late teens or my early 20s. I have this newfound power. Man, it's just not extrinsic muscular power. There's a power within me, which unfortunately I can't articulate. But there's this enormous amount of energy or power within me, which is just... it's given me a never say die attitude. It's made me more positive. It's made me stronger. It's made me healthier. And this is what I want to share with people. And this is my mission in my life at the moment, that I share this with everybody.
Is it fair to say that the feeling that you feel about yourself, the strength and the kind of energy that you're feeling, everybody can feel the same thing, and which is why you're trying to spread the message and spread the word? Is it fair to assume that everyone can feel the same thing? Because there's a glow on your face, undeniable glow on your face, which seems to be coming from somewhere. I would like to go to that place.
I'd attribute it to smart lighting, but I'm treading on thin ice here, trying to answer this question, right? I think it's possible, yes, for everyone to feel this tremendous surge of energy or connect with this energy which is present within us. It's possible theoretically, but now, can everyone achieve it by this practice? Possible, but it's also likely that a minority of the people don't stumble upon the benefits the way I have. But I would urge people to consider that I was living a regular life in a city with a regular job, 9 to 6, doing the stuff that most people do. I was a parent, I was a husband. So if I can do it, I think it's possible that it's really possible that anyone can do it.
I think it's very interesting. You brought out, your lifestyle and the lifestyle you used to lead. And now this is a question more for people who have already been practicing or who have already been interested in yoga or doing some form of fashion of yoga for a while. The question is that how do you draw a balance between the two kind of lifestyles? Like if you're an urban dwelling individual, there's a certain lifestyle which you've gotten used to, right? You have seen that kind of lifestyle. I've seen that kind of lifestyle. Most of us have seen that kind of lifestyle where, it's about long working hours. It's about late nights. It's about partying. It's about a lot of things which are not necessarily or intuitively they're not very much in sync with the yogic lifestyle, so to speak. So how do you? And it's not that you stopped socializing with your friends or stop meeting the people that you meet. You still have that part of your life, still there. So how do you reconcile between these two lifestyles, and how do you chart out a path for yourself?
That's an excellent question, Puneet. So, about 10 years back, I had a fancy to learn hypnosis. So I enrolled myself for a course in hypnotherapy and spent a few
Interesting.
years learning hypnotherapy. And I remember this chat that I had with my teacher, and she asked me, Nimish, you know what it takes for an individual to get hypnotized? And I told her a great hypnotherapist who can, bedazzle you and mesmerize you just by looking in your eyes. She said, "No, Nimish, that's not what it requires. It requires that an individual chooses to get hypnotized." You know. So what I'm trying to
Interesting.
say here is that we're all living these complex lives. They don't have to be complex. And if you want to uncomplicate this life, it needs to the fire needs to be in your belly. The will, the desire to be better needs to come from inside, from within here. If you don't have that desire, you don't have that motivation or that spark within you, then it's likely that you continue to live this life, partying and working 50, 60, 70 hours a week and um, strained relationships. And before you know it, you're going to be 60, scratching your noggin and asking yourself, so what did I do with my life? You don't want to be in that situation. So it's very important to realize that the time that we have in this particular vessel is limited, you know. So, so most of us who are watching this video are maybe 30 or 40 or 50 years old. And considering that the average lifespan of a human being is 70 or 75 years, it's a significant portion of our lives that we've already exhausted. And now we have limited time. So now we need to choose what we want to do with this limited time. Do we want to continue to amass wealth, have two apartments in the city, and have three cars parked in a garage? Is that what's going to make us happy? Or is it something else? Is it connecting with yourself and finding out what is it that truly makes you smile? What is it that truly gratifies you? For me, it's the mountains and yoga and meditation. And it's unlikely it's the same for you, Puneet, but you need to dive deep into yourself and try and find out what is it it, that has me ticking? What is it that makes me happy? And once you've figured that out, and mind you, this is not an easy process. This process of contemplation and introspection is not a 30-minute job. It's taken some of the wisest people uh, decades of contemplation. So it doesn't come easily to all of us. But just because it doesn't come easily to all of us, it doesn't mean that we don't contemplate, we don't seek what makes us happy. So the first step really is to try and seek and find out what makes us happy. So the sooner we embark upon this journey, the likelihood of us stumbling upon an answer of what keeps us ticking or makes us happy is a higher likelihood.
Very interesting. You mentioned mountains and the love for them, and of course I share it. There are a lot of other people who have a lot of love for the mountains, but there seems to be this strange mystical connection between spirituality or yoga and the mountains. What can you put some light on that? Why what is that connection? Why do people feel strangely drawn towards the hills when they, and why do they have these great spiritual experience, like you found a yoga center in the Himalayas and you just decided to go about it, and it kind of transformed your entire life. So what is this connection between mountains and human beings? Do you want to talk something about that?
Okay. Um, all right. So let me try and answer this as intelligently as I can. Right. So we'll have to go back into time, and not just 10 or 20 years. We'll have to go back fairly long back in time. So, as per the scientists, Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years back.
Hmm.
Ocean was formed about 4.4 billion years back. There's water on the Earth. And life, the first signs of life, was over 4 billion years back. right? And these were simple single cellular organisms which were living in the ocean, right? Which came into existence when a concoction of a variety of matter and ideal situations made this matter into living, well, not creatures, but single-celled organisms. So that's a scientific theory, right? So I'm going to try and come from science here. So that was about 4 billion years back, and now here we are at the apex. I mean, apex predators really right to the top of the food chain. But along this 4 billion year old journey from single cell organisms, we've turned into complex cellular beings or organisms, into sea cucumbers, in fish, and then the fish has walked into land and become an amphibian, and the amphibian is climbed onto trees and become birds and become they have the whole mammalian genus happen from there. And so all of that's happened over 4 billion years. And why I tell you this story is because I want us to understand that we are from nature. So when you're up on the mountain or in a jungle or by the beach, you feel this sense of calm, a sense of connection with yourself or even the nature, which is inexplicable. But yet there is this deep connection, isn't there? I mean, I'm sure you felt it too. So I don't know if that answers your question. So when you're up on the mountains or the beach or the jungle, you feel connected. And when you feel connected, you're open to new experiences. When you feel connected, you have likelihood of being more creative or innovative, because you have an open mind. And that's the benefit of having an open mind and being connected. And that's exactly what it did to me. I was up on the hills. I had some fabulous experiences up on the hills. I met yogis who'd been practicing for 80 years. And they were close to 100 years old and really healthy, not just physically, but of course, the mental health was just of a level that is unimaginable. And all of these things, the sound of the breeze, the sound of the sights of the mountains, the birds chirping, these vibrations, they really, really calm you and open your mind. And when I was in that calm and open state of mind, I embarked upon this journey and haven't looked back ever since.
Very interesting. And let me push you on this a little bit. I understand what you're saying, that the feeling of connectedness, which is much easier to obtain when in natural surroundings like in a mountain or near the ocean, and that makes a lot of sense. And experientially, I think almost everybody would agree with that. But if you also think about it, that is as much of nature as much we human beings are. And for whatever it is, these cities that we have created, these are also us, made by us human beings. It is also, I mean, I don't know why we can claim that it is not nature. It's also nature. This is being done by human beings. It might not be as pretty, or it might not give the same connectedness vibes. But how do I reconcile this? So why should I consider a city dwelling, an apartment, a skyscraper? Why should I not consider that as natural as a mountain or a tree or an ocean?
It comes down to energy, right? Now, there is a energy that you associate with a life form or something living. For example, when you're in a jungle and you have the energy of the jungle. Now, this again is difficult to put into words, but you can sense the energy of the jungle, or the energy of the waves crashing one by one. Versus having, a modern cities are also man-made. They're not nature per se. So man's gone, he's got cement, he's got wood, he's got glass, steel, so on and so forth, which he's mined for, or he's got that out of nature, and he's built these cities. And it's different, Puneet, from a vibrational standpoint. Now, the vibration in these cities, from a personal standpoint, the vibration is far different from being just in nature. And that's something you have to sense. I can't put that in a mathematical equation just yet, but you have to sense that, you have to feel that. And so there's this lack of energy in a city. You've got these houses, verticalist housing. You've got on an acre of land in Delhi, in Gurgaon, Bombay, you've got possibly thousands of people staying in that small piece of land, and and each family is living in 1,000 square feet, and it's not like being in nature. So now, when you've got so much of energy in that limited space, these frequencies, these energies, they tend to overlap. It tends to influence the way we look at things around us. It even disturbs us to a certain extent. We are unable to connect with ourselves. We're unable to feel at peace. There's a sense of restlessness, which I see with people living in large, crowded cities, and not just cities. It's anywhere there's this dense population. So greater the population, overlap of energies tends to happen. But when you're out in the nature and it's open, and there's two of you in 100 square kilometers or 100 acres, and there's just the sounds of nature. It's the trees, the sounds of birds chirping, the sound of a creek or a stream flowing, the sound of the leaf rustling in the winds, versus the sounds in the nature, the vibrations in the nature that we're in currently, in these vertical housings, societies that we live in. There's this white noise or sound of horns. And so it's very different to say that. But yes, if you could classify both as nature, I guess, but not from the lens that I'm looking at. I agree that they're both nature, but there's very different kinds of nature. So I feel that it's important sometimes to get away from this densely populated places. Give yourself some me time. Go to a mountain or the beach or a forest, or even just go for a morning walk to a wildlife park close by.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, the way you put it now, that makes a lot of sense. That we're both part of nature, but then there's a lot of difference in energy and the way we've structured these buildings or these areas where we live in. Nimish, you touched upon mental health a little bit. Let me probe you more on that. So, my first part of the question is, how do you understand mental health? What are your thoughts about it? How do you define a healthy mind? And second, what are the ways in which we as human beings take charge of our own mental health? Meditation and mindfulness, the only two ways that we can do it? And is there a difference between the two things? Is there a difference between meditation and mindfulness, or are they just similar, or just two words for the same thing? So, your thoughts.
So your questions are, how can we have better mental health?
Correct.
And difference between mindfulness and meditation. Okay, so let's deal with question number one. So the WHO, it said that most of the modern day ailments are caused because of people overthinking stuff. It's a mental issue. Now, of course, we know that the brain controls the rest of the body, right? But the brain is a tool, but unfortunately it controls the rest of us. So, and if there's too much of activity happening cerebrally or in the brain, there's too much of thought that's happening, what that does is it influences our overall health. So it becomes very important for us to realize the fact that overthinking stuff is not necessarily healthy, right? Now, unfortunately, in our society, our brains have been trained, especially so our left brain, which is the logical or the thinking part of the brain, it's been trained to think more and more and more, analyze, look at things logically, refer to data or history or experiences, and try and come up with certain arguments based on, all of these touch points. But what happens is, because of that training of the mind, it's constantly ticking. So imagine, like, if the mind were a rubber band and it was constantly ticking, or you're just constantly pulling a rubber band, there's got to be some give. And at a certain point, that rubber band's, it is going to be compromised. And when the brain gets compromised, what really happens is that it manifests itself into some sort of a physical ailment. You know, you could have blood pressure or cardiac issues, or even a common cold, because the immunity comes down, because most of your energy is being siphoned off towards, you know, the thinking bit, and the other immunity and the other facets of your body, they come down a little lower, right? So it's important to realize that we need to bring these number of thoughts into control. You know, well, control is probably not the right word, but we need to manage these thoughts. So, good mental health, in my opinion, the first step, the stepping stone to being mentally healthy, is being aware of how the brain functions, and ensuring that we don't overwork it. You know, if you are on a computer and the brain's like the motherboard or the processor of the computer, you overwork it, and then the computer just hangs, and then, you know, and then you're stuck. So you don't want that to happen to the human mind. You don't want it to get hung or crash. It's definitely not crash, right? So you realize that this motherboard or this processor of mine, which people call the brain, it needs some relaxation time or some chill out time, right? And I'm not saying meditation is the only way of, or yoga is the only way of doing it. There's numerous ways. I mean, you could just sit down, lie down on your back in a garden and just gaze at the ever-changing shape of the clouds, or you could sit by a stream and just listen to the sound of the stream, or just look at the waves crash on a beach. Different ways to slow yourselves down, right? But meditation, yoga is taking it to a different level. I'm not saying a higher level or a lower level, but I'm saying on a different level. So once you realize, you know, that your mind is the cause for happiness or sadness, you know, how you manage your mind is the reason behind it. I mean, that's the beginning step to being healthier mentally, right? Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what meditation is, or what one of the goals of yoga and meditation is. So the primary goal of yoga is to try and develop a single point of focus or concentration. And similarly, in meditation also, one of the primary goals is to achieve that single point of focus or concentration. So when one meditates, you know, they try and develop like tunnel or laser vision, actually, where nothing else exists except for the point that they're focusing on. And very often that point is your breath, or the sensation of the breath on the tip of your nose, or the rhythmic movement of your diaphragm or your belly when you breathe. Or at a later stage, it's not even your breath. You're just in a space of absolute nothingness. I mean, where the vibration of your brain, it's close to being zero, where your brain is just at complete relaxation or peace. Imagine like a tranquil lake, right? And this tranquil lake, which is just absolutely smooth and plain, and it's majestic, and it's reflecting the blue sky and the scenery around it. Your mind's a bit like that when it's tranquil, right? It's like that lake without anything on it. It's just peaceful and calm. And imagine tossing like a pebble into that lake, and try and picture what that pebble does to the lake. You know, there's these concentric ripples of waves, and each of those waves is like a thought. So when the thoughts are happening, it's like those ripples in the ripples in the lake. And what meditation is trying to achieve, that complete tranquility, where the vibration is super, super, super low, right? Of course, there are different levels of meditation, which I'm not going to jump into right now, but imagine being able to achieve that tranquility or that peace. Imagine being able to rest or shut down the processor or the motherboard in this computer while being completely aware. So in a computer, you turn off the computer, the power goes off. That I would equate to death in a human being. But now, how meditation is different is that you're aware, you're alive, and yet the motherboard's at complete rest. All the energy is within the body, and at any given time, 35% of the energy goes to the brain, right? So when the brain is silent, that other 35% of the energy is again focused towards your internal organs and the rest of your body, helping you heal and recover. So now let's talk a little bit about meditation and being mindful. Are they separate from one another? Perhaps, but they also have a ton of similarities between them. So once we start to meditate, what happens is we are very aware of what's happening within us. We start focusing on our breath. When we focus on our breath, we're aware of our emotions. When we're aware of our emotions, then we can manage our reactions or the way we react to a particular scenario much better. So once you begin to meditate, you unravel a lot of different kinds of wealth. One of the wealths that you unravel is awareness. So when you dive into yourself and you start getting to know yourself better, then what happens is you are functioning at a much higher state of consciousness or awareness. And with that sense of awareness, you are in charge of the way not only you react, but how you feel. I mean, if I were to ask some of you, take your hand, put it on your heart, and close your eyes and try and tell me what you're feeling right now. What is their emotion? And emotions like love, hate, jealousy, greed, very few of us will honestly be able to pinpoint what emotion that we're undergoing. But once you start to meditate, you're much more connected to yourself emotionally, right? And you know yourself much better. So you've got a higher sense of awareness. You see the difference? And once you have a higher sense of awareness, you can turn anything that you do into a task of pleasure that brings you happiness. So what happened recently is we've had this lockdown, and in India, as you know, we all have most of us have housekeepers. So my housekeeper has not been allowed to come in, and my washing machine broke down. And it broke down about 30 or 40 days back now. So I volunteered that. I put my hand up and said, I'm going to wash the clothes here. So I began to wash the clothes, and I began to, on the second or third day, I began to find joy in washing, an activity like washing clothes. And I really haven't been washing clothes for many years. I began washing clothes, and this is washing clothes with my hands. And I started finding joy in washing clothes, because what that heightened sense of awareness, it made me realize is that, Nimish, if I am really cribbing about washing clothes, and there is that, 45 minutes or 1 hour every day or every alternate day when I wash clothes, is that's time that I have really not lived, So that's the sense. So I had a sense of the first day I washed clothes, I wasn't jumping with joy, Puneet, because I'm also still seeking. I am not an enlightened being. I wasn't jumping with joy. But the second day, what meditation did, it created a sense of awareness. And I realized that, I'm better off not complaining during that 1 hour when I'm washing clothes. And I'm better off being happy and content just washing clothes. It's an example of what awareness can bring about in your life, the change it can bring about in your life. Right? I hope that explains and answers both your questions, Puneet.
Yes, that's some beautiful analogies, and then the example, the personal example you gave is a wonderful example, and I completely understand what you're talking about. Being aware and feeling the joy in what you're doing. That's beautiful. And so my small follow up question would be: so one would meditate to be more aware and be more mindful, but are there ways where a person can reach that awareness stage or that mindful stage without actually sitting down cross-legged and focusing on breath or doing some form of meditation? Are there ways to be aware and mindful without meditation, or they are two related very closely?
One of the easiest ways, I would say, is to begin. Well, it's not an easy journey, to be honest, but one of the easiest paths to tread upon to find this peace, right? This inner peace is definitely meditation or yoga. I mean, there's also a host of other techniques, which you could do. Tai Chi, for example. Some people tell me that they reach a state of relaxation when they garden. You know, so there's a host of different things that you can do, right? But if your goal is to reach a sense of heightened consciousness, and this consciousness is not universal consciousness, but consciousness of the self, of you, then I would definitely recommend that you consider getting into a practice which is inwards. And what do I mean by inwards? Is we are living our lives where our energy is expelled or it's spent towards the rest of the world. So as I speak, my energy and my focus is towards you. As I go for a walk in a park, my energies, I'm spending it towards admiring the trees and listening to the chirping of the birds and looking at the lake. When I'm teaching yoga, my energy is expelled towards or spent towards teaching my 20 students that are attending my yoga class. But very rarely we take this outward energy and focus it within ourselves, right? So you need to try and find out some technique that resonates with you. With me, it's been yoga and meditation, or climbing hills to a certain extent. While it's not the same as meditation, but climbing hills. And of late, I've been climbing hills very mindfully and with awareness. So I'm aware of every step, every stone on the path. I'm super aware of it. But try and find what your calling is. And one of the proven, meditation, yoga, is proven techniques. And these are proven over thousands and thousands of years across cultures, not just Indian culture, but across cultures. The Chinese have done it. South Americans have done it. Some people in Europe have done it. So people have been meditating and practicing some art form or some way of living, which has helped them go inwards. So you need to try and find out what are your options. So you need to evaluate what the options are. You need to do research and see what resonates with you. But you want to try something that's tried and tested and is working well all over the world. I mean, some of the smartest minds in the world are meditating for up to an hour a day. Hollywood stars are meditating for an hour a day. Athletes are meditating, for 30, 40 minutes or an hour a day. Everyone's doing it. So it's something that definitely you should explore and see if that resonates with you or not.
That's great, Nimish. That brings me to my next question, which is, you did mention a lot of different ways one can explore. You mentioned Tai Chi, and even within, meditation and yoga, there are a lot of different schools of thought. There are a lot of different ways of practices, right? So if a beginner is starting his or her journey, how do they go about it? How do they choose which teacher or which school of yoga, which kind of yoga should we subscribe to, or which is the best for us? How does one go about that?
Okay, that's again an excellent question. Huh? So, well, it boils down to awareness, Puneet. I can give you another example or a short story or an analogy. So, about 20 years back, my father, who was in the Indian Air Force, he was posted in Bangalore, and we were in Bangalore. And the Indians, it's a sense of chaos on the roads. If of course, you've seen Indian roads, but the others who haven't seen an Indian road, there's absolute chaos. There's cows on the road. There's people walking. There's vehicles, etc. So the government looked at the West, and they wanted to replicate and implement the law of jaywalking. So jaywalking simply means that pedestrians or people walking need to walk on designated pedestrian areas. So they implemented this law in Bangalore about 20 years back. Rather unsuccessfully, I'd like to add. People just didn't follow the law. because they weren't aware of what jaywalking is. So you see, it all boils down to awareness. So in our case, I mean, there's just, we're spoiled for choices. We go to a restaurant, and there's like 100 things on the menu, and we don't know what to order. We go to a supermarket, and we even want to buy cereal or yogurt or whatever it is, and there's like 50 or 100 different choices. We're spoiled for it. So when it comes to meditation and yoga, it's a bit like going to a supermarket or looking at the menu in a restaurant. So, and you're spoiled for choices, obviously. It will be unfair for me to pick on a certain style of yoga or style of meditation, because there's just so many things out there. There's so many gurus out there, and if you want me to name a few gurus, it would be unfair again, and I wouldn't do it because there's just so many wonderful teachers out there. So you need to explore, because there's also, other than these wonderful teachers, there's also all kinds of people in the market. You know, they've tried to make yoga and meditation into a commodity or a service, and have taken the scale of it to as a large platform or a business. And so you need to choose for yourself. Do you want to um, travel the jungles in the Amazon with shamans for a couple of years, or you want to live with sheep herders in Tibet, or you want to go and live by the banks of the Ganges and spend your time in a temple or a yoga school. So, I mean, there's so much you can do, and the choice really comes down to you and what resonates with you. So, for example, Puneet, mountains really resonate with me, but perhaps you want to drive a Ferrari, and that's what resonates with you. So, or there's someone else out there who wants to get betrothed or married to a Hollywood star. So it's all different for everyone. I mean, and so each one is own.
I can't drive, right? So no Ferraris for me.
Maybe one of those self-drive Teslas for you then.
Maybe let the time come, we'll see. So, Nimish, do you have a guru?
Well, my guru is my parents, to be completely honest with you. Most of the things that I've learned in my life is from my parents. And outside of my family, I have been unsuccessful to find a guru. But we don't need to look very far for heroes. There are often heroes around us, and we need to just realize that. I mean, your next door neighbor or one of your teachers, your parents, granddad, I mean, they could all be heroes. We just need to open our minds. And there's heroes all around us, and there's so much to learn from these people around us.
Interesting. So, Nimish, one of the concerns which a lot of beginners in yoga, or people who are, just about starting their journey on the side, is they feel, I don't know if they feel this way or they pick up such vibes from the media or the news, but yoga seems a very religious thing, or a Hindu thing. Is that true? Can you say that yoga is a Hindu thing, or is it more secular than that? What are your thoughts?
So yoga, my dear friend, is a way of living. Now, and it's completely secular. I'd also like to add that yoga comes from ancient times. I mean, yogis believe that the first yogi was Adiyogi, or Lord Shiva himself. But having said that, this way of life has no religious connotations to it at all. It's completely secular. You could be practicing Islam or practicing Christian, going to church, and you can still practice yoga. It doesn't require you to turn into a Hindu. And being yogic is not a religion, the last time I checked. So it's a way of life.
Then a lot of people will say that, things like Om and chanting a lot of the mantras which exist are kind of Hindu in nature. So again, there's a bit of a conflict in people's minds. Again, I'm not saying this is how I feel, but this would be a doubt in a lot of people's minds. So what do you have to say about that?
Definitely, so in my classes, I train people from various parts of the world. And often people ask me, Nimish, I'm not comfortable chanting Om or saying a mantra. It's fine. We're not going to force you to chant Om or say a mantra. But you have to also realize that yoga comes from India and from ancient India, not from modern India. Yoga comes from thousands of years back from ancient India. I mean, as legend has it, Lord Shiva was the first yogi from beginningless time. So it's really, really ancient. So a lot of the words or the chants that are a part of this yogic lifestyle come from an Indian culture. So there comes the Sanskrit chants and Sanskrit words, which are a part of this way of life. Having said that, you're not expected to change a religion when you chant this. It's just a part of the culture, and that is how it is. And if you choose not to chant or not to repeat a Sanskrit shloka, then no one's going to hold a gun to your head. You don't have to do it. So that's the way it is. And so yes, it's a way of life. It's definitely not a religion. It's a way of simplifying your life, leading a healthier life, both mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Understood. And how about the Rudraksh beads? Are those Rudraksh beads that you're wearing, or are
Oh, no,
those?
these beads, there's 108 beads that I use for chanting sometimes in the mornings. This is not
Interesting.
This is not Rudraksh beads.
Okay, so it's to count the number of chants.
Correct. So like the Christians use a rosary, Hindus use Rudraksh. I just use wooden beads, just to chant, because chanting is one of the easiest ways of emptying the mind. When you chant, the number of thoughts come down very, very rapidly indeed. So to kickstart my day, I often chant. And the chant's a simple Om chant. For those of us who must know what I chant, I just chant Om 108 times in the mornings to kickstart my day and just relax my mind before I can dive deeper and relax my mind even further.
Interesting. And I know you've spoken about this on other platforms, what Om chanting really means. But for the purpose of, people watching this video, do you want to explain what does Om really mean, and why, what benefit does it bring to you personally by chanting it, or to anybody else who would choose to do that?
Right. So as per the mystical Indians from the past, they considered Om to be the universal vibration. They said that everything in this universe has got an sound of a frequency to it. And they also said that the first sound that a human being makes when he opens his mouth is the sound of and when he's dying, he closes his mouth, is the sort of sound he makes. So they consider really this vibration to be the universal vibration. There's also been evidence to indicate that the vibration of the universe, the actual vibration of the universe, is a sound of vibration, buzzing sound of the universe. So scientists put out some spectrometers out in space, and the wavelengths that they receive from the spectrometers, they converted it into audio files, and they heard the sound of an expanding sound of the universe. So having said that, the ancient Indians, they kind of figured out, I don't know how, that the universal vibration is Om, right? It's the vibration that the universe has. It's the vibration that is present in all living beings. And they began to chant Om. And they put together these three distinct sounds of O, and Ma. And what these sounds, essentially, the purpose of stitching these sounds together was to try and focus at a certain point, right? So when you sit down and you chant the sound of Om, or or any other favorite sound that you have, what it does is it helps you focus and concentrate. So that's what chanting of Om enabled you to do, is concentrate. So very often you'll see old Indian texts, right, that are 3,000-4,000 years old. They usually began with Om, and then there was the text, and it ended with the word Om. You know? So at some point, people began to realize the importance of chanting Om is to help. It's a centering chant. It helps you relax, helps you focus, helps you concentrate. And then when you embark upon that journey, whether it's reading an ancient Sanskrit text, or starting a practice of yoga, or playing a sport perhaps, and when you just chant Om for a bit, what it does essentially is help you focus inward, focus and concentrate. Right? And then when you are carrying out that activity of a sport, or trying to meditate, or teach someone, or drive, etc., that heightened concentration or awareness, it gives you, it gives you an added advantage to carry out that task. That's what it does. So, yeah.
I completely agree. There's something which I practiced myself, and it really helps center me, and it just brings a uniformity between the universe, and it just feels like one thing rather than. So yes, it's definitely a very interesting vibration which it brings to my body. So that was interesting, Nimish, and you've added a lot of value to our lives by doing this Q&A today. But I'm very curious about the name of your channel. You call your channel Ultimate Freedom, and I like the name, but I would like to know, where is it coming from? What does ultimate freedom mean to you?
Right. Ultimate freedom to me means that I'm free of suffering. That's what it means to me. Now we know what's common between you, me, and the other people watching this video, and perhaps almost every other living creature in this world, is that we all suffer. Now, once we stop suffering and we have a life which is bereft of suffering or minus the suffering, I think we would have reached a stage of what I'd like to consider ultimate freedom. Now, my life choices, the things that I do in my life, I put them together in a way that hopefully I'm close to getting that ultimate freedom, maybe 20 or 30 years from now, and well, that's the thought behind the channel. Is by calling it Ultimate Freedom, I was trying to evoke the thought that perhaps while suffering is a part of all of our lives, maybe we can take certain steps to reduce or maybe get rid of all of that suffering from our lives at a certain point. Right? And we begin to seek to embark upon that journey. And that's what the logic behind the name of my channel is.
Great thought, Nimish. I hope we all let go of our suffering with time, and I hope we let go of our thoughts. The too many thoughts that we keep harboring, the unnecessary thoughts. I hope we all learn how to, not harbor so many of these thoughts. Thank you so much, Nimish. A lovely discussion.
Thank you, Puneet. See you soon.
Always so good to see you.
Take care. Bye.